So we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are live.
Oops. Hi, I'm Joyce Hertzoff, coming to you live from sunny Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm the author of the Crystal Odyssey series. The first book of that is The Crimson Orb, and there are 4 books. In addition, I wrote A Bite of the Apple. This novella won the New Mexico Press Women's Award for Young Adult Fiction in 2016. The reading I have for you today is from the sequel to that book that's finally almost ready to be done, to be published. A little background on this. These stories are part of something called Portal Adventures. In the stories, Annabeth Haynes, the hero of the stories, is a portal traveler going to other worlds from her world of Nokar. And in the first book, when she went through the portals, she ended up in New York. Now, in the second book, it's going to be quite different. And this is just an excerpt from the beginning of the book, or early on, before she sets out on her second trip as a portal traveler. Okay. I lay awake for a while that night, thinking what it must have been like for Mama to make such a drastic change to her life. She has just learned that her mother was a portal traveler before she was married. She loved my father, Ian, and me. She showed it in every gesture, in everything she did for us, in her smiles and her tears. But did she ever regret settling down after years of being a portal traveler? I finally fell into a dream-filled sleep. I stood on a street, much like the ones I'd seen in New York. Metal and glass buildings towered over me. People and vehicles rushed by, and the air was hot and full of noxious odors that filled my nose and didn't let go. A cacophony of voices and the rumble and honking from the cars assaulted my ears, but it wasn't New York. There was something different about the pale yellow color and heaviness of the air, the distorted reflections from the buildings, the metallic smells. There were no trees. Even in New York, trees survived. In the parks, they seemed to thrive. In this dream city, nothing was green. I looked for clues. My self-defense lessons with Morgan made me warier, more sensitive to possible dangers. The vehicles were similar to those on Earth, although they had 4 wheels on the roadway and another 2 high off the rear. I scanned my surroundings, taking in everything. Why did the buildings seem so strange? I focused on one, hoping to spot the incongruity. It had rows and rows of windows, but I couldn't see through them. Then it struck me. No doors. I'd never seen a building of any kind anywhere that didn't have a means of entrance, usually a door at street level. There were no visible outside stairways, no elevators or even lifts, worked with pulleys. The windows began 4 or 5 feet off the ground without a way to reach them easily. But as I stared at the nearest building, a doorway appeared and 3 people walked out before the opening disappeared again. I walked toward the wall to the spot where I was sure I'd seen the door. I touched the smooth surface, but couldn't locate a handle or mechanism to open it. I stepped back and fell backward and kept on falling at an ever increasing speed. My eyes snapped open. It was still dark outside, but that feeling of falling with nothing to catch me was still with me. My heart pounded. My legs felt weak. It took a few minutes before I stood steadily. Had the revelation about my mother stirred another of my dreams? How much was premonition and how much an extension of things I knew and heard? What did my dream mean? Were the doors and the strange worlds like the portals requiring possession of a key? Portal keys were ordinary objects. The ones I'd used to go to New York were an apple and a man's hat. Although the apple had been enchanted, and there was quince fork that brought my friend from his world, Lomedy, to Earth the same time I was there. Was falling part of the dream, or just a feeling you sometimes get during the night? I'd felt that before. Perhaps my mother would have insight. I poured tepid water from the urn on my nightstand and sipped it, then lay down. But I was afraid to fall asleep again. Instead, I tried to remember everything I could about the dream. Eventually, I dozed off. The dream didn't return. In the morning, I rose early, washed in our bathroom with its more primitive toilet and sink compared with others I'd seen. I pulled on another blouse and long skirt. My usual clothing on the farm was comfortable, perfect for kneeling for long periods of time as I planted or harvested vegetables. The heavy shoes were appropriate, especially when the rains made the ground muddy. The jeans, t-shirt, and sneakers I'd gotten in New York might have been okay and might have held up to the heavy work, but I rarely wore them because they were so different from our usual garb. My mother was where she'd always been every morning of my life, in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The yeasty aroma of baking bread filled the room. I studied her, thinking maybe for the first time what she might have been like 25 years earlier. She was dressed like me, with a familiar long golden braid down her back. She hummed to herself as she worked, always the center of our home, the touchstone for all of us. Like me, she resembled her sister, Jillian, without the sophisticated and elaborate clothes and hair. She was shorter than either Aunt Gil or me, yet she exuded strength. Her bright blue eyes saw everything with a clarity and honesty I was finding to be rare. I took a stack of clean plates and set the table, rehearsing in my mind what I wanted to tell her. My heart pounded. My legs felt weak. It took a few moments before I stood steadily. Had the revelation about my mother stirred another of my dreams? How much was premonition? And how much an extension of things I knew and heard? Mama turned to me and her brow creased. Bet, is something wrong? No. I forced a slight smile. I just had a bad dream last night and didn't sleep well. A dream? Her eyes focused on me. I sighed. It seems my dreams are sometimes premonitions, but I never know when they're just dreams, or rather nightmares. Tell me about this one. She abandoned the ham she was slicing, wiped her hands on the towel at her waist, and glided toward me, taking my hands in hers. I described what I saw in my dream, emphasizing the peculiarity of the buildings without doors. My voice hitched as I spoke. I wonder if that's related to the portals. It was easier to talk to her about them now that I knew she'd use them too. Do you think the portals could suddenly disappear or be changed in a way we don't understand? There's always been that fear. Her eyes narrowed. We know they're there and how to use them, but we know nothing about where they come from, how they were created. Most of the rest of the book is about the portals moving or disappearing and what is causing that, and how Bet and her friends investigate this phenomenon. Are there any questions? Well, then I guess that's going to be it, unless you want me to read some more. Well, I'll read a little bit more. I didn't prepare much more than this. I nodded. Consulwoman Leon says we've been using them for so long, we tend to assume they're natural, but they can't be, can they? Mama shook her head. So what do I do about the dream? Who should I tell? You'll be returning to Willoughby in 2 days. Tell Gil, she'll know what to do. She squeezed my arm and smiled reassuringly. Okay. She brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. You have a gift, Bet. I smiled wryly. Some gift. It will serve you well and the rest of our people. Okay. So if you are interested in reading Bet's adventures, either in the first book, A Bite of the Apple, which is available for, I believe it's $1.99 or $2.99 on Amazon as an ebook, and $8.99 for the print. It's also free on Kindle Unlimited. And in addition to the books I've mentioned, I also have a kid's book, So You Want to Be a Dragon. And I will be selling my books at a few events coming up this spring. And basically, that's what I have. I'll see you again. I'm on a panel on Monday. Thank you all very much. Bye.